today I'm going to sing a song that I often call The Life of the Rover. It's a more correct title is The 30-Foot Trailer, and I'm going to sing it along with Lucy Johnston, whom I first heard singing the song over 50 years ago, before I joined the group back in the 1960s. And Brenda Castles, a great concertina player from County Meath, now living in Dublin, and a great singer as well, and the wonderful Haley Richardson from North Carolina. And the four of us are going to be doing, as I said, The Life of the Rover, or The 30-Foot Trailer, which is the name given to it by its author, Ewan MacColl. Now, Ewan MacColl was one of the most legendary figures in English folk music in the 20th century. And he started off his professional life not as Ewan MacColl, but as Jimmy Miller. And he was a playwright. He was married for some years to Joan Littlewood, and the two of them were very, very prominent in English, what they called kitchen sink theatre, theatre for the proletariat, for working class people, aimed at and inspired by the lives of working class people. Very revolutionary for its time in the 1930s. He was actually cited by George Bernard Shaw as one of the most promising young playwrights in England at that time. He changed his name after the war to Ewan MacColl and started to reclaim his own Scottish heritage, particularly in folk song. Did a lot of one-man appearances in the north of England, mostly to working class audiences. Eventually he split up from Joan Littlewood. She continued a very successful career in theatre. And then in 1954, his life was to really undergo a dramatic transformation. By that stage, he had met Peggy Seeger, the young Peggy Seeger, who came from America, fell madly in love with her, and wrote that memorable song, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, in honour of Peggy Seeger. It later became a mega hit recorded by Roberta Flack. And is one of the great songs of the 20th century, one of the great love songs indeed of all time. And Ewan MacColl and Peggy Seeger and a BBC radio producer called Charles Parker, they embarked upon a series of what they called radio ballads, 8 of them in all, which really transformed the place of folk music in England and indeed beyond, reaching across to Ireland, where I was personally to get influenced by it a few years later. It started off in 1954, and there were eight radio ballads. They were basically a combination of documentary and song, art, the spoken art. Peggy Seeger was the musical force behind it. Ewan MacColl was the creative, artistic force behind it, and Charles Parker, of course, was the producer. They documented the lives of and immersed themselves in the lives of 8 different communities. There were teenagers, polio victims, there were train workers, road workers, there were fishermen, and the group that inspired the song, The Life of the Rover, or The 30-Foot Trailer, were the travelling people of Great Britain, marginalised in every way conceivable, some of them semi-settled, but mostly embarking upon a nomadic life. And this was the kind of tail end of a long-established life in Western Europe. And what they did typically for these radio ballads was to immerse themselves in the community, and up to 300 hours of interviews, and using the folk speech of the people, they would create a radio ballad, as it was called. They're still accessible today, and you can find them on Google. And songs were written by Ewan MacColl, and in this particular instance, where they documented the lives of the travellers of Great Britain and indeed Ireland too. The song, The Life of the Rover, was created, The 30-Foot Trailer. I first heard it sung by the Johnstons before I joined the group in the 60s. And one of the greatest honours I ever had in my life in the 60s was to be invited by Ewan MacColl to the Singers Club in King's Cross in North London. And we were the guest artists. I was never so terrified in my life there, putting on a show for the great man and for Peggy Seeger. And fortunately, he liked our performance. And he invited me down to their house in Beckenham in Kent, and I went there in my Volkswagen Beetle a few times, and I didn't talk to Ewan MacColl as much as listened to him. He was very didactic, very forceful, and a legendary figure. I was in awe of him, as most people were, and I treasured those times I spent with him. before I went off to America in 1973. I stopped singing the song The Life of the Rover or the 30-foot trailer. You move on to other songs, typically as a singer. And then in the 1990s, and it's a long story for another day, I came in contact with the Irish Travellers of Georgia. At that point, they were settled in South Carolina, in a place called Murphy Village. And I eventually ended up visiting the community and doing oral histories with the oldest traveller of all, a man called Eddie Big Shot O'Hara. They all had nicknames. He was 92 years of age, and myself and Eugene O'Donnell, we resurrected the song The Life of the Rover, and to his total delight we played it for him in his trailer home, and then I started to sing it again and have been singing it on and off ever since. So that's the song that we're going to sing for you today. Lucy Johnston back singing with me again after 50 years, Brenda Castles on the concertina and vocals, and Haley Richardson from North Carolina. The 30-foot trailer, or The Life of the Rover.
The old ways are changing, you cannot deny. The day of the traveller's over. There's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to bide. So farewell to the 30-foot trailer. Farewell to the tent and the old caravan, to the tinker, the gypsy, the travelling man, and farewell to the life of a rover. Farewell to the cant and the travelling tongue, farewell to the Romany talking, the buying and selling, the old fortune telling, the knock on the door and the hawking. Farewell to the tent and the old caravan, to the tinker, the gypsy, the travelling man, and farewell to the life of a rover. You've got to move fast to keep up with the times, for these days a man cannot dunder. There's a bylaw to say you must be on your way. There's another to say you can't wander. Farewell to the tent and the old caravan, to the tinker, the gypsy, the travelling man, and farewell to the life of a rover. Farewell to the pony, the cob and the mare, the reins and the harness are idle. You don't need a strap to be breaking up scrap. So farewell to the bit and the bridle. Farewell to the tent and the old caravan, to the tinker, the gypsy, the travelling man, and farewell to the life of a rover. Cannot deny the day of the traveller's over. There's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to find. So farewell to the 30-foot trailer. Farewell to the tent and the old caravan, to the tinker, the gypsy, the travelling